Hello, everyone, and welcome. Some of the stories we have for you right now. A taxing timeline, that is. Donald Trump's new warning as the tariff deadline looms.
Without us, Canada can't make it. You know, Canada relies on us 95%.
The deep digs at Canada and the strict border ultimatum.
We can't change Donald Trump.
We can outwit him.
How the U.S. threat is shaping the debate over who should lead the Liberal Party.
Have enough money. I used all my rent money. I borrowed from my mother.
Inside the alarming rise in elaborate fake job scams.
Best thing to happen to Gossip Girl in years.
Plus tributes to a much-loved millennial icon and actress, Michelle Trachtenberg.
CTV National News with Sandy Ronaldo.
Donald Trump again today invoked what he calls Canada's reliance on the U.S. as he held the first cabinet meeting of his second term, claiming Canada can't make it without us. Trump also said it's unlikely he'll be satisfied by Canada's border security efforts ahead of next week's deadline to impose 25% tariffs on all Canadian imports. Let's bring in CTV's Judy Trin. And Judy, what are the chances of Canada getting another reprieve this time?
Sandy, it's unclear, and I wouldn't bank on it. The president himself has confused timelines that he's imposed on multiple countries. But the deadline that matters for Canadians is just 6 days away.
Honestly, it's not fair for us to be supporting Canada. And if we don't support them, they don't subsist as a nation.
At the president's first cabinet meeting, with his commerce secretary sitting by him, Donald Trump indicated he won't be satisfied with Canada's progress on stopping illegal migrants and fentanyl at the border.
But the fentanyl-related things, they're working hard on the border. At the end of that 30 days, they have to prove to the president that they've satisfied him to that regard. If they have,
it'll
give them a pause, or he won't.
It's going to be hard to satisfy.
Canada has appointed a fentanyl czar, leased Black Hawk helicopters, and designated drug cartels as terror organizations. It has also reduced illegal crossings by 90%. But the president is focused on using tariffs to bolster domestic industry at the expense of Canada.
Tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell cars into the United States. The tariffs will make it impossible for them to sell lumber or anything else into the United States.
In a statement, the White House said the scheduled tariffs on Canada and Mexico could change pending negotiations, but as of now are still moving ahead. The federal government has until March 4th to meet the markers the Trump administration has set, or tariffs could be imposed on all Canadian goods. On March 12th, additional tariffs on steel and aluminum are scheduled. Then worldwide reciprocal tariffs in April. Businesses and workers are being told to prepare for a long trade war. The Canadian Labour Congress says 25% tariffs will cut deep.
So our estimates are that 1.5 million jobs will leave within the first 12 months if there are the broad stroke tariffs that we're expecting to start taking place next week. We know that 2.4 million jobs in Canada are reliant on export to the U.S. specifically.
The federal government has said it is working on a robust financial plan to help Canadians get through a long trade war. But Sandy, so far, few details have been released.
Okay, Judy, thank you so much. Now, Donald Trump also used his airtime today to praise the work of his billionaire cost cutter, Elon Musk, who was present at that cabinet meeting. Musk says he's getting flack for chopping away at government jobs. And Donald Trump also provided some clarity on a key meeting and a deal with Ukraine. CTV's Washington Bureau Chief Joy Malbon watched along with us. Okay, Joy, let's talk first about Ukraine and the agreement on critical minerals. Now, where does that stand?
Well, Sandy, even though Ukraine's President Zelensky suggested it wasn't a done deal yet, Trump says they will sign an economic agreement here in Washington on Friday. That will include sharing Ukraine's mineral wealth and its payback, Trump says, for billions of dollars in American aid, helping in fighting Russia's invasion. But Trump said Ukraine joining NATO, you can forget about that. And he repeated Kremlin talking points, saying that's why the war started in the first place. As for security guarantees that Ukraine wants so badly, here's what the president had to say.
Well, I'm not going to make security guarantees beyond very much. We're going to have Europe do that because it's in, we're talking about Europe as their next door neighbor. But we're going to make sure everything goes well. And as you know, we'll be making we'll be really partnering with Ukraine in terms of rare earth. We very much need rare earth. They have great rare earth.
Well, Joy, it'll be interesting to see that meeting on Friday when President Zelensky comes to Washington to meet with Donald Trump. I also have to ask you, what was your takeaway from what appears still to be a love-in between Donald Trump and Elon Musk earlier this morning when Musk also addressed the media?
Sandy, this is extraordinary. This is an unelected billionaire who has the ear of the president, who sees him as an enforcer. Musk has taken a chainsaw approach to the federal government, cutting jobs and contracts. Thousands of people have been fired. Others are facing ultimatums to justify their work or be fired. Both Musk and the president are facing some angry backlash from voters for this slash and burn approach. Here's what Musk had to say about that.
And taking a lot of flack and getting a lot of death threats, by the way. I mean, I like stuck him up, But if we don't do this, America will go bankrupt.
Musk admits he's made mistakes, but Trump is encouraging him to be more aggressive, telling his cabinet secretaries to prepare for large-scale layoffs. Sandy?
Okay, interesting. Joy, thank you as always. Now, the U.S. president is facing backlash for a video he posted online promoting his controversial plan to take over Gaza. The AI-generated video shows the war-torn Palestinian territory transformed into a beach resort with luxury yachts and hotels. It also features Trump sipping cocktails with Israel's prime minister. The U.S. president has proposed expelling more than 2 million Palestinians from Gaza. Well, the 4 candidates for Justin Trudeau's job took aim at Donald Trump in last night's English language debate, and the reviews are in. Now it's up to roughly 400,000 party members to choose a new leader as voting gets underway. CTV's Rachel Aiello now on the debate and where the race goes from here. Rachel.
Sandy, the condensed campaign is nearing the finish line. Advanced online voting opened up this morning with a strict verification process. And the Liberal leadership hopefuls are now hoping to ride any momentum they picked up in last night's showdown straight to the ballot box.
I would say that I'm the candidate here that is the most distant from Mr. Trudeau.
The 4 candidates campaigning to become Justin Trudeau's replacement tried to distance themselves from the Prime Minister's record.
Trump is unleashed and empowered. As your Prime Minister, I will be too.
While positioning themselves as the best leader to stand up to both U.S. President Donald Trump and their main Canadian opponent.
Who's the worst person to stand up to Donald Trump? It's Pierre Poilievre. He worships the man.
All contenders also sought to draw contrast with their rivals, but the only one to land a few pointed jabs was Karina Gold.
I came to have a debate because I think that's not just what Liberals are looking for, but that's what Canadians are looking for.
The reluctance to go too hard at their other contenders could be because the Liberals don't want to hand Poilievre any fodder for future attack ads. Nano's latest ballot tracking shows the Liberals have closed what just 1 month ago was a 20-point polling gap.
For all intents and purposes, it's a horse race right now and a coin toss.
Today, the Conservatives pounced on a comment Carney made in a post-debate scrum about the timeline of and his involvement in a decision to move the headquarters of an asset firm that he chaired from Canada to New York, around the time Trump started threatening tariffs.
We know that we can't trust what Mark Carney says.
The voting period for the Liberal leadership race closes on the afternoon of March 9th. That night, the winner, chosen by a preferential ballot system, will be announced at a special event in the nation's capital. And then the countdown is on until the next general election. Sandy?
All right, Rachel, thank you. Now, the White House also made it clear today it will decide which media gets to be present to ask questions at Donald Trump briefings, something not going over well with the free press. So it caught our attention when we heard that Nova Scotia's premier appears to be taking a page out of the Trump playbook. CTV's Paul Hollingsworth is looking into it for us. And Paul, what's going on?
Sandy, the practice and tradition of interviewing politicians at the Nova Scotia legislature goes back generations to before Confederation. Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston has moved media availability to this room across the street, which means no more media scrums and interviews in the legislature. Houston says this improves access for reporters not in the Halifax area.
By moving the scrums, I guess, probably 60 feet from where they were to this room, there's technology in here that will allow reporters to phone in.
The opposition NDP call it an example of limiting accountability and access to public information.
In all kinds of ways. They're raising money to bypass the media. Like, that's their words. They're reducing the accountability of the Auditor General, or trying.
Claudia Chender says this decision is also connected to the shifting political tone in North America.
I think we're seeing this same kind of demonization of the media south of the border. I think we're seeing it across the country, particularly in conservative jurisdictions from conservative premiers.
Whether the premier scrums in one room or scrums in another, it's not something that is keeping most Nova Scotians awake. So the fact that the opposition wants to use their time talking about issues like that is a disservice to Nova Scotians.
This process applies to the governing Progressive Conservatives. The official opposition NDP and the Liberals will still be available for scrums inside the legislature going forward. Sandy.
CTV's Paul Hollingsworth. A fraud story to share with you now, something that's being tracked by the Anti-Fraud Centre. It has to do with a massive rise in so-called work scams, those online schemes that generally hook in victims with a fake job that ends up costing would-be employees money, and sometimes big money. CTV's Quebec Bureau Chief Geneviève Beauchemin has spoken to a woman who lost thousands and is now struggling. Jen.
Yes, Andy, last year Canadians lost $638 million to fraud, including a record amount to so-called work frauds. Clicking on an online job ad took Ashley Valentini down a spiral she is still trying to escape.
And then at some point, I didn't have enough money. I used all my rent money. I borrowed from my mother, and I was panicking.
Valentini is a mom of 4, including 14-month-old twin girls.
Seuss.
She works in a school but wanted to take on a second job she could do from home, and she found an offer online.
Basically, you have to rate and comment on different travel packages, tour packages, data optimization, so that when people book things, it'll pop up.
It turned out to be an elaborate scheme. A trainer communicating via WhatsApp eventually asked Valentini to send in money to reserve tour packages she would rate. And she did get money back the first time. She put in $10 and pocketed $220 through a crypto account.
So that was really what made me just keep going, because I'm like, I'm going to get the money.
And at this point, you're desperate?
And at this point, well, when I finally gave up, I had already sent $11,651.
In increasingly desperate WhatsApp exchanges, Valentini tells the trainer she has no money left. You can try to apply for a loan from your bank. The trainer replies several times. In 2024, $47 million was reported lost to so-called work or task scams. In 2022, that was just $7 million. The spike is driven in part by the number of remote job seekers and a rise in crypto transactions.
You see, on a sophisticated website that your money's growing with time, but unfortunately, at the end of time, you're not able to get that money back.
To Valentini and her family, the losses have been devastating. She's trying to raise money and looking for another job.
I stole my mother money, and it's, I feel, anyways.
Valentini says it was her duty to speak out so that others don't live the same nightmare she's still dealing with. Sandy.
All right, Jen. Well, we always take note when well-known actors pass away. This one is notable also for her age. 39-year-old Michelle Trachtenberg was found dead inside her Manhattan apartment this morning.
When do the trumpets cheer?
Trachtenberg appeared in millennial-era shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and she rose to fame as Harriet the Spy when she was just 10 years old, and she also starred in the popular Gossip Girl series. Reports say Trachtenberg had recently had a liver transplant. Her death is not being considered suspicious. Coming up after the break, all-inclusive tips on staying safe and healthy.
Things don't look like they've been refrigerated for 2 hours. Don't eat them.
How to best avoid getting seriously ill on vacation. A national outpouring of grief in Israel today as the country gathered to mourn the Bibas family. Thousands lined the streets along the route of a funeral procession for the mother and her 2 young sons who were killed in captivity in Gaza. Hamas says it will return the bodies of 4 more Israeli hostages tomorrow in exchange for the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. A steady stream of prayers for the Pope outside his hospital in Rome. The pontiff is still in critical but stable condition, with the Vatican adding that Francis sat upright again today as he receives treatment for double pneumonia. And a child has died of measles in the U.S. in the country's first known death from the virus in a decade.
There have been 4 measles outbreaks this year. In this country last year, there were 16. So it's not unusual. We have measles outbreaks every year.
U.S. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. seemed to downplay the seriousness of the Texas outbreak, with at least 124 confirmed cases. The child was unvaccinated and had been hospitalized with a highly contagious illness. Well, Canadian travelers are demanding answers after dozens became violently ill at a Mexican resort. They say the resort is not taking responsibility for turning their dream vacations into disasters, and they want to warn others. CTV's Andrew Johnson has been talking to them. And Andrew, how can travelers protect themselves?
Sandy, I've spoken to a doctor and travel expert today who agree you are assuming some level of risk traveling to an all-inclusive resort, but there are ways to prepare for the worst. The worst describes what Canadian travelers Joel Boyley and Sheena Robinson experienced recently in Playa del Carmen at the all-inclusive Sandos Playa Car Resort. Boyley and Robinson were both part of large groups attending weddings over the last week and a half. Boyley says he's connected with hundreds who became very sick shortly after arriving. They claim the resort was not helpful and is not taking responsibility, despite authorities closing down its main buffet restaurant during their stay. We contacted Sandos Playa Car and have not received a response. It claims online it follows strict cleaning and hygiene protocols. An Ontario emergency room doctor says that's not always the case.
If things don't look like they've been refrigerated for 2 hours, don't eat them. If you walk over to the cheese and the sides of it are starting to curl, and if you see people are practicing good hygiene and there's Purell next to the food preparation areas and people are using it and they're not sharing utensils, those are all good things and things that I like to see.
A travel expert advises before you go, make sure you have adequate medical insurance and document any issues you have at a resort, which can help in filing a complaint and maybe getting some kind of compensation. Sandy.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Still ahead, when a parking garage comes crashing down, investigating the cause behind a collapse that trapped dozens of cars. Dramatic video from Ottawa today after the partial collapse of a downtown parkade. 50 vehicles were inside as the building began to crumble. CTV's Katie Griffin joins us with a breakdown of what happened. Hi, Katie.
Given the extent of the damage, it's remarkable that no one was injured when this collapse happened. Someone parked in the garage called 911 Tuesday night when they saw rebar sticking out. The cement columns reinforcing the top level were cracked and broken. The building engineers confirming a potential collapse was imminent, so firefighters got everyone out, and then a few hours later, the roof collapsed, taking several other stories of the garage with it.
When we were coming through, we actually saw one of the girders had actually broken and was separating from the rest. 5 others were also bending under the weight load. I'm in absolute awe. I've never seen this in my 51 years being alive.
The official cause of the collapse is still under investigation, but there was a huge pile of heavy snow on the top level of the garage. About 50 vehicles remain inside the structure, some of them a complete loss, and drivers have no idea when they'll be able to get them out. Sandy?
CTV's Katie Griffin. Thanks, Katie. Ontario's 4 major party leaders are making their final pitches to voters today on the eve of the province's snap election. Doug Ford is looking to secure a 3rd consecutive majority, while his rivals are urging Ontarians to opt for change. After the break, a lesson on teacher shortages, why schools are seeing a surge in uncertified instructors. Teacher shortages are a problem right across this country, and now New Brunswick's Teachers Association is sounding the alarm over the growing number of uncertified teachers in the classroom. CTV's Sarah Plowman now on what some are calling a retention and recruitment crisis. Hi, Sarah.
Sandy, the Canadian Teachers Federation thinks the problem may be going unnoticed because students are still going to school, schools are still running.
In classrooms across Canada, a growing trend. A teacher without an education degree, without a teacher's certificate.
We need certified, qualified teachers in our classes, and we need to act urgently to get it done.
New Brunswick's Teachers Association is raising concerns as that province now has nearly 200 uncertified teachers, up from more than 130 a year ago. People who've been vetted but aren't formally taught or certified to teach.
We're thankful they're there and they're filling the role because we'd be in dire straits without them, but they certainly need support.
In Quebec, there are even more. As of December, more than 9,100 uncertified teachers were working in classrooms.
Every province and territory are using unqualified personnel in schools. Everyone, from varying degrees.
The Canadian Teachers Federation says Canada has a retention and recruitment crisis. They point to the workload and working conditions.
So we need to reduce class sizes. We need to have more resource teachers to help students with needs. And we need to give teachers time.
New Brunswick has seen its population grow, and with it, an influx of students. The union says nearly 1,000 teachers will retire from the Anglophone district within 3 years. Universities are adding seats, but that takes time and money.
I think it's something that needs to be spread across all of the schools of education in New Brunswick.
New Brunswick's Minister of Education says the government has come up with a strategy to retain and recruit teachers that will be released in the coming weeks. Sandy.
Sarah, thank you for this. And thank you for sharing your time with us. I'm Sandy Ronaldo. Your local CTV News is coming up, and be sure to join Omar later tonight. We'll see you tomorrow, we hope. Have a nice evening. Bye for now.